Hello, everyone. My name is Alon Burstein. I am a visiting assistant professor and Israel Institute Fellow in the Department of Political Science at the University of California, Irvine, and I am here to give you the updates of the last 24 hours in the war between Israel and Hamas. It is currently the eve of October 13th, 2023 in the United States, and the morning of October 14th, 2023 in the Middle East. And I remind everyone, if you're interested in previous summaries, specifically the first days of the current escalation, and how it developed, please click on the links in the first comment below. So, starting with two reports about the kidnapped Israelis that are being held hostage by Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. The IDF announced that it has been carrying out over the last couple of days raids into the Gaza Strip and recovering the bodies of slain Israeli citizens. Now, it is important to note that these are very likely not Israeli hostages that were kidnapped alive into the Gaza Strip. These are likely people that died in the initial attack who were killed by Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad on October 7th, and the groups tried to kidnap the bodies back into the Gaza Strip in order to use them in future negotiations. This means that the death toll from the initial attack, which was at around 1,100 to 1,150, is likely to rise even more. In addition, this also indicates that the IDF is already planning different aspects of a ground invasion as they were trying to map out what was the trail that Hamas took on as they were kidnapping people on their way back into Gaza. In addition to that, Hamas released a video today showing its fighters armed with guns and full body armor and masks while they're playing with different Israeli children. In initial reports in Israel and around the world, it was stated that Hamas was attempting to show that these children are being held as human shields against Israeli attacks. While that may be the case, in Hamas's report, they stated that the video is meant to show how humane they are in how they are treating the children. You see Hamas fighters trying to rock a child to sleep. You see Hamas fighters trying to offer kids water and play with them, etc., etc. The reason I bring up how does it look from the Hamas point of view is to indicate that the international pressure that Hamas is facing seems to be working. Hamas is very worried about the fact that they are getting a lot of bad press over the fact that they have killed and kidnapped children in Israel, and accordingly they are trying to show, to develop a better image, how humane they are with the children. So that's just a note about the effectiveness of the international pressure on Hamas. Continuing to some of the violence, there were continued rockets and missiles fired from the Gaza Strip today throughout all of Israel. There were direct hits in houses in Rehovot and Sderot, and one house caught fire. In addition to that, there were a lot of rockets shot into the town of Ashdod, Tel Aviv, Gush Dan, and also, importantly, there were sirens that went off as Hamas fired missiles all the way north as far as Tzfat and the Galilee. This is the farthest north that Hamas has ever managed to fire a missile, and Hamas boasted about the fact that their missiles can now reach anywhere in Israel. In addition to that, in the Gaza Strip, Israel yesterday ordered Gazan civilians to flee down south from Gaza City in preparation, likely, of an Israeli ground invasion so that they are not killed in the crossfire. Hamas has ordered the citizens to not flee down south. Nonetheless, there are reports of as many as 10,000 or tens of thousands of citizens that are trying to flee down south further into the Gaza Strip. Moving on to the northern front. Hezbollah continues to show its support for Hamas with low acts of violence. However, at the same time, they are by all means not throwing their entire weight into the conflict. So there was an explosion today in one section of the border between Israel and Lebanon, and a gunfire ensued shortly after that. In addition, there were several rockets and mortar fires fired from Lebanon that Hezbollah took responsibility for, and the IDF retaliated against Hezbollah targets after there were other craft that were shot down over the town of Haifa. In Israeli retaliations into Lebanon, it is reported that 3 different journalists were killed. One of them was a photographer from Reuters. It is unclear who the other 2 were at this time. In terms of Israeli retaliations in the Gaza Strip, there were no official reports today of how many retaliations were carried out. However, going by the previous days, it is likely that there were roughly 500 to 600 different aerial raids in the Gaza Strip, and the Palestinian Ministry of Health is reporting that there are already upwards of 1,600 Palestinians that have been killed in Israeli retaliations. Continuing on to the West Bank, the Friday prayers in the Al-Aqsa Mosque went by relatively peacefully. I say relatively because there was some violence and rioting in East Jerusalem. However, it is important to note that this is relatively rare, considering when there's escalations between Israel and the Hamas movement. Usually, we see a lot of violence spiraling out of the Friday prayers. In this case, it was relatively calm. What is important to note is that the IDF is continuing to mount its pressure on Hamas in the West Bank. Several activists have been arrested, and specifically a leader in the Hamas movement in Nablus was arrested today. Moving to some of the political developments, the Commissioner of the EU is visiting Israel to show her support while she was visiting a hospital along with the Israeli president. Hamas rockets were launched into the city, and the president of Israel, along with the Commissioner of the EU, were seen fleeing into a bomb shelter. So this is continuing to be part of what Israel is trying to show. The different leaders are coming to show support, the ferociousness of Hamas, and how there is no place in Israel that is safe. In addition to that, Saudi Arabia today announced that it is officially suspending its normalization talks with Israel. So if you've been following news in the past, the United States has been trying very hard in the last couple of months to broker a normalization deal, a little bit like the Abraham Accords between Israel and Saudi Arabia would reap the benefits of a U.S. defense pact. Saudi Arabia today officially suspended those talks, and importantly, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia had a talk with the president of Iran to discuss the regional developments. This appears to be part of Saudi signaling if they're not going to lean towards Israel and the defense pact of the United States, they may have to lean more towards Iran. And finally, President Biden today met with the family members of 14 of the hostages that are held in the Gaza Strip that are also U.S. citizens. That meeting is reported to have gone very well, with the president showing a lot of sympathy. In Israel, this has been juxtaposed with the fact that Prime Minister Netanyahu has yet to find the time to meet with the with the family members of any of the hostages that are held in the Gaza Strip. And there was a lot of criticism in Israel over this juxtaposition. That is our report for the last 24 hours. I'll be back tomorrow.